Before we get into it today, I'm getting very close to 1,000 subscribers, which means I will be able to monetize, buy more stuff, and make these videos bigger and better than ever. So if you like what you see, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and click the bell to get notified every time I upload something. It really does help my channel to grow and reach more subscribers just like yourself. I've honestly been at odds as to what to call this one. The other ones had obvious arcs, the Charlie arc, the Divergent arc, but this one isn't really part of any arc. And now I've tied myself to a naming convention, which you should never do. So I don't really know what to call this one. They ended things rather early with the Divergent arc, and that's because New Who came back and ruined everything for everyone. So they had to end things early and wrap everything up with Charlie and Kariz before doing a soft reboot on the 8th Doctor, more tooled towards capitalizing on that New Who audience. They're all by and large standalone stories, more in keeping with the rest of the monthly range. Some of them are brilliant, a couple of them not so much. One of them is actually insultingly bad, and I've found that I have a fair amount to say about all of them, so instead of taking them all in one go like I did with the Divergent arc, I'm just going to split it into two parts and just do 4 at a time. In the last video, the Doctor and Charlie were trapped in an alternate universe with different concepts to time. The Doctor was in a state of discomfort and made really grumpy, but now he's back home in his home universe, and the Doctor and Charlie have a new friend in Kariz, who they can't wait to show all the many wonders of the universe. This is the last of the 8th Doctor Monthlies, Part 1. The first story we're looking at is Terrafana. Another good title for it would be Actions and Consequences. The Doctor, Charlie, and Kariz have just left the Divergent universe, the TARDIS materializes in a dark corridor so they know they're home. And at the end of the corridor, they find themselves face to face with Davros, the creator of the Daleks.
Welcome to my world. I am its Emperor.
Well, Emperor, sorry to have dropped in unannounced, but as Charlie says, it's been an incredibly long day. Don't mind us, though. I'll close the door behind us. You don't want a draft getting in. Bye then.
Dalek, stop them!
The last time Davros had seen the Doctor, from his perspective at least, was in the 7th Doctor episode Remembrance of the Daleks, while fighting a Dalek civil war on Earth in 1963, otherwise known as the only year ever. Davros' superior gold and white Daleks, I actually really like this design. They launch a plot to steal the Hand of Omega, a stellar engineering device the Time Lords use to create the Eye of Harmony, the source of all of their power and mastery over time. Davros intends to use the hand on Skaro's own son, to make his Daleks a temporal power to rival that of the Time Lords. And I know what you're thinking, this would have very much started the Time War early, but unfortunately for the Daleks and fortunately for everyone else, their plan backfired. The 7th Doctor, as usual, had one before he even left the TARDIS, before he even put the kettle on. He reprogrammed the Hand of Omega to destroy any star it was used on via supernova. He then allowed Davros to steal it, knowing exactly what he would do, and when Davros said, "I have the Hand of Omega, I'm about to do this," the Doctor egged him on.
It shall become all
powerful! Crush the lesser races! Conquer the galaxy! Unimaginable power! Unlimited rice pudding!
And as an encore, the Doctor went straight outside and taunted the last Dalek into committing suicide.
The Doctor has destroyed a complete species. The charge must now be genocide.
The first parts of the story involve the Doctor and Davros in conversation. Davros is weak and dying and becoming a Dalek, a fate which terrifies him, while the Doctor takes the piss, playing the fool, and dismisses accusations of genocide, of which he is definitely guilty. If you're wondering where Moffat got the idea for their encounter in the first two-parter of Season 9, this is it. As their conversation goes on, the true extent of his crimes comes to light. Davros' revenge is cruel, deranged, and by far the worst thing anyone has ever done to the Doctor or any of his companions. And it completely recontextualizes the entirety of the Charlie and Divergent arcs. In my Mary Shelley video, I somewhat alluded to it, and I did promise there that I would explain later on, but to do so would mean heavy spoilers, so skip to this timecode if you want to avoid that, and I encourage you to do so. This is a really good audio. After the destruction of Skaro, he had nothing but time and isolation, and in the darkness his thoughts were on the Doctor and what he had taken from him. He thought back to their first meeting on Skaro in Genesis of the Daleks, when the 4th Doctor used the metaphor of a virus to try to illustrate the harm the Daleks would do to the universe. He was bored, he needed something to do, so missing the point entirely, he decided to make that virus, the one that would give him power rivaling that of the gods. And while the Doctor was out in the Divergent universe, he enslaved the Earth as he reshaped the world and covered the sky, leaving only small pockets of human resistance, which he largely left alone as they spent their time throwing lavish parties where they got together like absolutely blotto and did the hokey pokey. The Doctor destroyed his home, and he made himself a new one. But that's not the full extent of his crimes. Before Charlie, the Doctor used to travel with a brother and sister, named Samson and Gemma, who I'm depicting as Bill and Polly because there's no official images of him. I don't think they even did the character design for them, and honestly, they just remind me of Bill and Polly. They went on many mad adventures, ice caves, the swinging 60s, bookshops, and raging parties where they got absolutely smashed out of their minds. But their travels were cut short when they discovered a ghost ship in deep space, and the Doctor let them explore it on their own while he read an Agatha Christie novel that Samson gave him for his birthday, and on the ghost ship, they found Davros. He had been alone for a long time at that point. He tortured Gemma and Samson, cackling all the while. When he had learned who they were, and who they were travelling with, he boarded the TARDIS, catching the Doctor completely unawares in his home. He hurt the Doctor too, and then he began to operate, augmenting Samson and Gemma, using them to take over the Earth and build his new race of Daleks made from human remains, and leaving the Doctor completely amnesiac, again, with no memory of Gemma or Samson or what he had just allowed to happen. The thing that really gets me is that this all took place right before the start of Storm Warning, like literally moments before it. The Doctor had only just woken up. Yeah, let that sink in. Davros also operated on the Doctor and the TARDIS, giving him a constant visual and audio link of the Doctor and all of his adventures. And he had become rather addicted to Doccy Who. When the Doctor discovered that link, he obviously cut it off. And Davros's reaction is very similar to my reaction when BritBox Australia decided to cut off access to Doctor Who, and I can't even use a VPN and watched it on the British service because it's a different service, and sad. And yes, I know it's going to be on Disney+, but that doesn't mean it doesn't suck right now, Jeffrey. This is by far the worst fate any companion could suffer, but it would work far better if we had some sort of emotional connection with the companions that were suffering it. After all, this all comes completely out of left field, with no hints or references leading up to it, which does make the revelation of it all a little bit more shocking, but on the other hand, we don't know Gemma and Samson. When Bill Pops got shot and cyber-converted, the moment when the Doctor discovered her fate hit so hard because we got to know her for an entire season. But with Gemma and Samson, the most we have is this episode and a brief mention in the Mary Shelley arc where the Doctor mentions them and then ditches them to hang out with the author of Frankenstein. Where's my 8th Doctor Gemma and Samson box set? I mean, it's after the fact, but the re-listen value for this story would be worth it alone. Although it is possible that they are characters in the books. I haven't read the books, and I've been too lazy to Google if they are in the books, and if they are in the books, leave something in the comments section so I can feel like an idiot. But anyway, overall this was a brilliant and wonderfully deranged little outing. It's the best Davros story I've ever seen, and I've listened to the one where the 6th Doctor and Davros gets hired by a mega galactic corporation and are forced to work together. Terrafana is an absolute classic, and if you haven't listened to it yet, you need to fix that immediately. The next one we're looking at is called Scaredy Cat, and this one is kind of a dud. Kariz wants to see a planet that is completely untouched by civilization, so the Doctor takes him to a planet in a system where the neighbouring planet is sworn to protect it and never set foot on it, and upon arriving they find that they have not only set foot on it, they've set up shop and are performing horrific brain experiments on the locals to figure out if they could prevent criminality by zapping their brains with enough radiation. Also, there's an annoying little girl who keeps popping up, and there's a lot of talk about the possibility of a planet having a collective consciousness, which is a thing, I guess. It's not completely unredeemable. I mean, there are some good moments, particularly between the Doctor and Kariz. I've been a little bit harsh on Kariz. I mean, yes, he does believe that if you kill someone, you're saving them from life, and he wants to save the Doctor and Charlie one day. It's a whole thing, but he's not completely evil. He does have a very solid sense of justice and morality, and he's not exactly cool with needless suffering. When they get to this planet, the Doctor takes them back in time to figure out something in the relative present, and they find a colony that is dying from some sort of a space disease. The Doctor could save them very easily, but he refuses to, because they are part of events now. If they decide to change something in the past, then it could alter the future in unpredictable ways, and also they probably wouldn't have even gone to the past in the first place because, bootstrap paradox. The Doctor understands this, Kariz doesn't. In order to get information out of the locals, the Doctor tells them that they are part of an advanced party and that help is on its way. And then he just leaves them to suffer like he's Dr. Phlox in that one episode of Star Trek Enterprise. Kariz, not down with needless suffering, feels compelled to do something about this, and gives them some of the medicine, only prolonging their suffering, which means that the Doctor gets to gloat. This is all good stuff. It's an essential companion experience, learning that there are some parts of history that you simply can't interfere with. Hell, one of my favourite First Doctor episodes is The Aztecs, which is all about a companion wanting to change history to prevent a genocide. The Doctor also accidentally gets married in that episode after he makes hot chocolate for someone. It's a brilliant episode, it's hilarious. I mean, there's a lot of white actors wearing brown face and being POC, but it's also the BBC in the 60s, so what more do you expect? Wanting to change the course of history for the better is a great and proven basis for an episode, but Scaredy Cat Cat isn't about that. It's mostly a story about trauma and how it can seriously mess you up if it happens to you at an early age. This is another great basis for an episode. But Scaredy Cat goes about it in the weirdest frickin' way possible, and it starts punishing you for logical thought. At one point, the Doctor starts talking about blue tits.
Blue tits. What?
And by blue tits, I mean the birds. YouTube, don't demonetize me, please.
Back in the 1920s, a bird called the blue tit discovered it could tear the tops off milk bottles and drink the cream. Soon, this skill showed up in blue tits over 100 miles away, which is odd in that they seldom fly further than 15 miles. Bird watchers caught on and traced the expansion of the habit. It spread faster and faster, until by 1947, it was universal throughout Britain. Where did they get this knowledge?
Perhaps they like the taste.
Morphic resonance, actually. The theory of collective memory throughout nature. The memories are held by a planet's morphogenetic field, and then passed on to each new generation of life. In this case, the blue tit.
Oh, it's history time again. Oh yes, I'm doing a history about blue tits getting into some milk. This is an Oz Who fan video. You knew what you were getting yourself into. This was a real thing that happened. But how did this happen? Is it evidence of a neural net shared by the animal kingdom? Spoiler alert, no, it isn't. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in a Big Finish play. In the UK, originally they didn't seal their milk bottles. The cream would thicken at the top, so I guess they thought there was no point because you tip it over and the milk doesn't come out because of the cream. But it also meant that things could get into it, including blue tits. Birds in general are lactose intolerant, but being able to eat this stuff was a selective advantage, so the tits that could digest it boomed in numbers until lactose tolerance became typical of urban blue tit populations, which is a great example of evolution at work. But then World War I came around, and someone decided that maybe it was a bad idea to let things just get into your food because germ theory of disease and stuff. Suddenly, these little tits were cut off from a food resource that they depended on. But for generations now, they were conditioned to know that there was food inside these milk bottles. And it was only foil on top, so they started pecking at it. Eventually, they pecked through it, and the tits got covered in cream, and some of them got really, really good at it. And all the rest of them copied it. And this would have happened convergently all over Britain, where milk bottles were all too recently not covered with foil. Doctor, could you please stop buggering Occam with his razor? That's not the only stupid thing about this episode. The Doctor seems to think that planets are born fully formed, with life and complex ecosystems already on them. Even the colonists from earlier decided to set up shop on this planet because it was brand new, because it had just popped into existence, I guess. There was no talk of terraforming or anything. They were just like, oh, it's a new planet, so we're just going to settle down here. And I'm pretty sure that the Magraphians aren't in this universe, and they usually don't do planets on the cheap. At one point, the Doctor tells Charlie that the reason why he's never brought her to a new planet is because Time Lords know not to go to new planets, because evolution is still weaving its magic or something. Rock planets go through several stages of development. First, they're rocks floating around in space, then they're drawn together by gravity, and the friction of that causes them to become molten as they form into balls. I would think that the main reason you wouldn't visit a new planet is because the floor is literally made of lava. Also, evolution isn't a magical thing that does its job and then stops. It's a continual process of change via mutation and natural selection, and it will keep happening for as long as life is around. Honestly, it's like the Doctor has the same understanding of evolution and planetary formation as Cam and Ham, and that guy thought that Noah put dinosaurs onto a frickin' boat. And yes, I get it, it's all metaphorical for how trauma early in life can mess you up later on, which links nicely to the experiments that the people are doing on the monkey men, essentially treating trauma with trauma and making everything a whole lot worse. But you know what? That's what an alien metaphor is for. You don't need to butcher science things that have already been established as things in the Doctor Who universe in the classic run to make these things work. You don't need to draw ridiculous conclusions about birds figuring out how to peck through foil to get covered in cream to justify a sentient planet. You could just do it. You could leave it unexplained or do it similar to how James Cameron did in Avatar, where every plant and animal forms part of a global consciousness. I don't even know how to sum this one up. It's just bad. It's a silly story with a silly plot that punishes you for being scientifically literate. Feel free to skip this one. The next one is Other Lives, and it starts out with the Doctor showing Charlie something very big and very impressive that he's very fond of.
Doctor, it's huge! It's absolutely enormous! I mean, much bigger than I'd ever imagined. What a magnificent
The
erect...
Crystal Palace, Charlie, or what came to be known as the Crystal Palace.
Oh, the joys of the audio medium. There is no way that this wasn't an intentional innuendo, and I heartily approve. In the novels, the Eighth Doctor is canonically very well endowed. See this broke canon video by YouTuber Davis for more. Other Lives is a pure historical that takes place in the Victorian era in London in the year 1951, the year of the Great Exhibition, that thing that happened which I stupidly conflated with the Vienna Exposition in the Mary Shelley video that I made, and yes, I think it's been well established that I am an idiot. The Great Exhibition of the works of industry of all nations is considered to be a symbol of the Victorian age, held in Hyde Park in London in a massive temporary structure called the Crystal Palace, a massive feat of British engineering made of steel and glass, containing many other feats of engineering from throughout the world. It was organised in celebration of Victorian industry and design, a venue for nations from around the world to showcase their industrial achievements, but it was arguably more an excuse for the British to flex their supposed superiority with their exhibits taking centre stage. It was also set up as a way of fostering hope and encouraging healthy competition through industry among nations. Europe had gone through a very turbulent half a century, what with the French Revolution and Napoleon Bonaparting all over Europe. The centrepiece of the exposition was truly the venue itself. The Crystal Palace was massive, multi-levelled, and built to contain thousands of people along with all the exhibits at any one time. And the Doctor has taken Charlie to see it. Not Cariz though. Cariz can't come. He's banned, for very obvious reasons, until you consider that around this time there is a lizard lady from the dawn of time and her wife and their manservant who looks like a potato goblin kicking around solving crimes like Sherlock Holmes. And in the process, influencing Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to write Sherlock Holmes. And nobody bats an eye at this. I mean, this is pretty Moffat, but honestly, just give him a hat, give him a beard, get him to focus his skin tone on white, and he should be fine. I mean, if anyone got close to him, they'd just assume that he has a skin condition, but no, he gets excluded because he's a lizard man. But anyway, it just seems like the Doctor is excluding him is what I'm saying. After saving 2 French dignitaries from an assassination attempt by hiding them in the TARDIS, they end up touching the console and the TARDIS disappears, and the Doctor, Charlie, and Cariz are stranded in 1951, not knowing if the TARDIS is going to materialise again. Through circumstance, they end up separated, and they end up finding themselves caught up in the minutiae of other people's lives, having new roles forced upon them, other lives if you will, with the Doctor finding himself taken in by a woman who is convinced that he is her estranged husband, to whom he shares an uncanny resemblance. Meanwhile, Charlie ends up making friends with Arthur Wesley, the first Duke of Wellington, and finds herself unwillingly impersonating a French dignitary who happens to look exactly like her, only a little bit fatter. For some reason, extremely uncanny doppelgangers just sort of happens, Big Finish. Yeah, it just happens. It's weird. Meanwhile, Cariz is abducted and forced to perform in a freak show in Piccadilly Circuit, Ella the Elephant Man. Otherwise has a lot going on with it, but it has you on the edge of your seat wondering how exactly they're going to get out of each predicament. And at times the story is really chill. The Doctor gets to experience a life that he has never thought he ever wanted and clearly cannot ever have, while Charlie gets to hang out with a man who in her time was regarded as a legend. I really like the characterization of the Duke of Wellington. He was a military man first and foremost, veteran of many campaigns, most famous for his efforts in the Napoleonic Wars. He was also a politician. He was Prime Minister twice for the Tories. All of this giving him a commanding presence, but he can turn on a dime, turning on the charm immediately if the situation suits it. He has a kind front, but he can turn any situation to his benefit. He's a master manipulator. He's also a Tory, and he also participated in actual colonisation. So yeah, problematic by modern standards, and the story does not shy away from this. The only other criticism I could offer is that this is like a year before he died. He was a little bit sick towards the end of his life, and I can't find anything saying that he was even at the exhibition, or at least not in any sort of official sense. But yeah, overall, Other Lives was a brilliant use of a historical setting, and it takes the characters out of the comfort zone and plays with the historical setting really well, and I highly recommend it. The last one I'm looking at today is Timeworks. How could I describe this one? Well, you see, a society is like an enormous clock. It only works when all the little cogs mash together. The best clocks have dual movements, cogs that fit, that cooperate by design. I'm being metaphorical. Did anyone else watch JX's new video? It was really good. Our heroes find themselves in a place where time is frozen. It seems like a medieval society, muddy roads, carts and horses, but there's a lot of anachronisms, like the fact that everybody has really high quality wristwatches. They're exploring this frozen world when they're completely separated from the Doctor, who finds himself in the same place but time has started again, while Charlie and Cariz are stranded between times. The world building in the story is really good. The people in society treat time like it's currency. Everyone is forced to keep to strict schedules, and productivity is everything. Fall behind and you run the risk of being downsized, and if you waste other people's time, you are a time waster, and you will be taken by the Clockwork Men, who will snatch you out of existence between the tick and the tock. They have no other lives outside their work, all of them cogs and machinery of the great clock, with no time to themselves except for eating and sleeping, no days off, no vacation time, no sick leave, just working day in, day out for the promise that one day they might not have to work anymore. Then they can rest, although most people don't think that this day is ever going to come. This story is very heavy on the social commentary. Big Finish are very well renowned for their social commentaries, and as usual, this one is about as subtle as a brick wrapped around a manifesto. The comparisons to our own society are kind of obvious. We only have short lives in the grand scheme of things, life is precious, we only get one chance at it, yet we spend most of our time working just to survive, under the promise that one day we won't have to anymore. A promise that is getting further and further out of reach for people of my generation with the expanding age of retirement. How many artists, scientists, musicians, or great actors are stuck behind checkout counters or trapped in a cubicle? How much human potential is being lost in the daily grind? How many great works of art will we never see? How many scientific breakthroughs will be postponed or never happen? How much better would the world be if nobody had to work unless they really wanted to? Although most people would probably just spend all their time inside playing Minecraft. I don't know, personally I'm a bit of a Trekkie, and I hope that one day we will have that glorious post-scarcity Star Trekian future where everything is automated and everyone has access to all their basic needs, and spend their lives following their passions and bettering themselves, and searching for new life and new civilizations, and boldly going where no one has gone before. But unless someone wants to invent a replicator or a six or change society in several drastic and radical ways, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon, or at least not in our lifetime. Timeworks is really good. You should give it a listen. And that's it for today. At time of recording, I'm getting very close to that sweet, sweet ad rev. I can almost taste it. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really does help my channel to grow. And why not join me in the next one, where the Doctor gets bitten by a brainworm, grown men play with Lego while eating ice cream, what they got from an astronaut, Riz finds absolution, and Charlie leaves the TARDIS in possibly one of the saddest situations that any companion has ever left the TARDIS, which is almost ruined by shitty Australian accents.